I was just thinking about it first. Boldly I approached the throne, and I was thinking, wow, I don't think I've ever thought about that. Usually I think, you're humble, you're a sinner. And isn't it just wonderful that because of Jesus we can be really bold about it? Thank you, God. I'm getting serious new wine vibes here. I don't know if anyone else is. I think it's just a dampness that's coming through the door. I'm experimenting a little bit today. Usually, I said earlier, I make videos for schools at the moment. Usually I've got an auto cue and I just read it and it's brilliant. And the last time I spoke here, I had all my script in front of me. Today, I've just gone for bullet points. So I'm going to meander and I'm going to lose my place and forget what I'm saying. Katie's going to tap. Brilliant. This morning, my wife was woken to this sort of pitter-patter sound, sort of a shuffle and a snuffle, and the sounds of, good morning, Mummy. Ooh, that tickles, Mummy. I love you, Mummy. That was the sound of my 3-year-old getting into bed. My mornings don't normally start like that. My mornings start a bit different. My mornings usually start with a very distinctive sound, a distinctive noise, and a very, very distinctive feeling. The noise is sort of like a growl, an almost sort of primitive, primal, sort of noise. It's not my alarm clock. The feeling is very difficult to describe. Imagine you have a sort of 6-year-old daughter who doesn't weigh a lot, but it's quite sort of bony at the joints. And imagine that daughter sort of straddling over the top of you and jumping as high as they can off the bed. And as they reach the apex of that curve, just sort of tucking up their legs to make 2 points with their knees, and then slamming down as hard as they possibly can onto the softest parts of your body. It's is exactly that. Every day. And then I don't get, I love you, Daddy. I get, I love wrestling, Daddy. I just love to fight. And then I get punched. I don't know if that's unique to my daughter. I suspect it might be a common trait amongst children, amongst people, really. Maybe she's a perpetrator of violence. Maybe she's just preparing for the struggle. But we all are familiar with people fighting each other. We do a lot of fighting, a lot of wrestling. Life is a bit of a struggle. So maybe it's that, maybe it's just she sort of takes after me and I'm just not a great person. I find myself getting into fights and arguments, even though I try to be sort of nominally a man of peace. It never quite comes off. Particularly when I think about the kinds of arguments and fights I get into, most of them are obviously with my spouse. But if I ignore those, the follow-up one is always to do with cars driving too fast down our road. I don't know about you guys, but it really sort of makes my blood boil. And I don't claim to be a particularly great driver myself, but I do try very hard to respect the 20-mile-an-hour limit. And especially down my lane is literally a lane. It's basically a pedestrian path. I'm very lucky I live with a cricket ground at the end and a village hall and allotments. It's really rather lovely, and it is full of people, old people, young people, vulnerable people. And we get cars zooming down our road because they're just thinking about the cricket ground at the end and not bothered about the houses and things they're driving past. And I get a bit sort of antsy about it. And quite often, just because of the nature of my driveway, when the road's here, and cover your ears. If you're a child, cover your ears right now. Great, don't look. Wonderful. Because when a car comes along, I just go, hi, like that, right in front of them. And I enjoy giving them sort of a big shock. And usually they slow down. Or I'll do the sort of, you know that one, you've all done that, right? And almost always they slow down. Just very occasionally, they won't slow down. So then I'm like, ooh, level 2. And I will storm after them because it's only like 100 meters to the wreck. And I'll find where they've parked and I'll say, you need to slow down. You're driving far too fast. Usually I've run, so I'm a bit out of breath. Already my adrenaline's up. I can feel it right now. I say, it is not good enough. You are going to kill someone. Now, a lot of the time, these people will be quite perplexed and surprised. Usually, they will say, sorry, and that's fine. I just wanted them to get the message. Usually, they'll say, I just didn't get it. It's not quite an apology, but that's fine. They've got the message. Just very occasionally, to those very occasionally things, they'll say, I wasn't speeding. I was doing under the speed limit, and that is like a red rag to the bull of my brain, and I go berserk. A lot of swearing involved. I'm not proud of it, but it just flips a switch. I know I shouldn't really get involved, but I feel like I'm fighting the righteous fight, protecting our children, protecting our old people, saving their families, because, they're all going to get wrecked if they do something terrible. So I feel like it's righteous. I think maybe it's not. As I say, I'm not super proud, but that's me. That's the truth of my situation. Ephesians 6:12 says, our struggle is not against flesh and blood. I feel like I should read that more, because often I'm arguing with that person. That's what I'm going for. I'm going for that person. Our struggle is not against flesh and blood. In fact, when I think about most of my arguments or fights that I have, it seems to be that it is against flesh and blood. I don't know if you guys have ever had 10 fights in your life, but think back over the last 10 fights. Was it against a person, or was it for some lofty, higher goal? Because for me, so often I'm just fighting the person. I seem to get very easily in a place where I'm in fight mode, grumpy mode, even easier. And when I think about the church, generally, we've, as a global church, historically have fought many good and important battles in the name of Jesus, and they have been right. But I also find that I hang my head in embarrassment because the church is so often stuck on fighting, about flesh and blood. We particularly seem to be fighting about what people do with their fleshy bits, and maybe we should focus more and not fighting about those things. Antonia read the Message version earlier, and she said this, the fight is against the devil and all his angels, not against other humans. And he goes on, Paul says, be prepared, for you are up against far more than you can handle on your own. Take all the help that you can get. Truth, righteousness, peace, faith, and salvation. God's word, he says, is an indispensable weapon. And I really hung on that when I was reading the Message, an indispensable weapon, because I am a big fan of the right tools for the right job. When we moved into our house, it was not a wreck, but it had a lot of work, and I discovered something called an impact driver. I was maybe late to the game. You guys know about impact drivers? Nobody? Oh, right, great. I wasn't late to the game. You do, right? Best invention that man has ever, humankind has ever come up with. Forget the wheel, forget fire. An impact driver is like a drill crossed with a screwdriver, and it does every job. It's incredible. They're only like £100, and it will change your life. If you have not got an impact driver, you need to get one right now. And because I found I could do almost anything. If I couldn't use the impact driver, just a hammer would do it fine. Tools for the job. I like the right tools for the right job. I've got a few, bits and bobs for tweaky, strange things, but the right tools for the right job, I believe in that. And we know that maxim works because it is a proper maxim. And I want to tell a story which has focuses quite a lot on the gear that people have. It's a famous story. It's David and Goliath. Now, I asked my daughter earlier if she would like to play the part of Goliath. Would you like to be? No, she doesn't want to. Brilliant. So we'll move on from that. David and Goliath, you know the story. The Israelites are locked in battles. They're having fights. Their fights, although sort of in the biblical text, are against the evils of the world. Really, literally, they're fighting other humans. So it's not a great start for them. And both camps, the Philistines and the Israelites, are on either side of the valley, and they're just a bit sort of in a stalemate. They're not really going anywhere. And every morning, the champion of the Philistine army, Goliath, would step forward and he would taunt and he would jeer and he would challenge their champion to a fight. Goliath was massive. It says he was about 9 feet tall, and it goes into detail explaining his tools, his weapons. He had a bronze helmet, he had a huge spear, very big, scary equipment. And all the Israelites were terrified. Not one person was willing to step forward, not even their king, who was meant to lead them through all things. So they were just sat there for weeks on end, until one day, a little shepherd boy, who was not a soldier, was delivering picnics to his brothers, and he heard Goliath, and he was not impressed. And David had this sort of bout of bravery that doesn't come to me very often at all, and said, I will fight this ne'er-do-well. And the king and everybody is shocked, and the king says, okay, fine, I'd love this, because I'd much rather you die than me. So he gives David all of his armor, and he goes on to list all of the right gear and equipment and the tools that David could have, his sword, his breastplate, his shield. And of course, we know that because David was such a little person, that gear was not right. It was not the right tool for the job. It didn't fit him at all. So he shrugs it all off, and he takes a sling of all things, and he goes down and he picks up 5 small stones from a stream. All of this is very little, very small, very ordinary. And as he storms over to Goliath is... there we go. Goliath is shouting and boasting at him, and David says to him straight, you are going to go down because you are against God and I am for God and I won't stand for it. Yes.
How much longer are we going to be here?
Oh, about 10 minutes. Brilliant. That was the tap of the watch. Don't even need you, Katie. Wrap it up. David slings his sling, lets that stone fly. It goes phew, thwack, straight into Goliath's head. He falls down, crashes, dead as a doornail, and everyone cheers. When we think about David and Goliath, we often then think, ooh, what are the giants in my life? What am I up against? What's my righteous fight? What are my 5 stones that I can fling at that evil thing? And I read something recently that absolutely blew my mind, which was basically, we often assume that we are on the side of right. And we need to seriously consider that we might just be on the wrong side. When I'm shouting at someone because they're speeding too far, going too fast, I assume that I am on the side of right. I am righteous. Just sometimes we need to consider the fact that we might be the giant. We might be the one that is over-energized with negativity. We might be the one that is boastful or jeering or standing against the Lord in some way. And it takes a David, a Jesus figure, Jesus himself, to give us a good thwack sometimes and help us realize what is the righteous battle. Sometimes we don't need to consider so much the tools for the job, but what are the jobs for the tools? What are the jobs for the tools? It goes on in Ephesians to say, put on the full armour of God, the belt of truth buckled around your waist, the breastplate of righteousness, your feet fitted with the gospel of peace. Take up the shield of faith, put on the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is God's word. Truth, righteousness, which to my mind is following in the footsteps of our Bible heroes. Peace, faith, which is trusting in God. Salvation, which is the work of Jesus, and God's word. These are the tools that God has chosen to give us. And when we come to a job or a fight, maybe it's better rather to consider, what do I need to do to win that fight? Maybe we should look at the tools and ask ourselves, are these going to help me? Because if not, I'm probably doing the wrong job. Last week we were thinking about vocation and calling, about what to do and who to be. And for me, the first clue about what we should do with our lives and who we should be with our lives are the tools that God has given us. Truth, righteousness, peace, faith, salvation, God's word. He hasn't given us other things. This is the list right here. This is the armor for the fight. And if these aren't the right tools for the job, then we're not doing the right job. So the next time you find yourself in a battle, ask yourself, is this the right gear? Because if it isn't, then we're probably in the wrong fight. I'm going to pray. And then, Chris, you wanted me to say something, but I've forgotten what it was. So I was going to introduce the prayers. Brilliant. Wonderful. Let's pray. God, life is a struggle. And struggles can be really hard. Almost always, I guess, by definition. Thank you for what you have given us to overcome evil in the world. But Lord, help us to never confuse our vendettas, our firings up with your fights. But Lord, help us to always remember what you have given us. Help us to remember that you give us truth, righteousness, that you give us peace, faith, salvation in your word, Lord. And let us only ever use those tools, that gear, to fight your battles and nothing else. Amen. Now we're going to pray on video.
This year, today, me and Antonia are going to do some, so go on.
The prayer's brilliant. So God, thank you that you've brought